Good morning, Tel Aviv. Shalom. I am Suzanne Daniels, and besides finding people backstage, I'm actually going to talk today about Backstage and how you can improve developer experience. You want to fight the boredom for developers. You want to fight the confusion, the chaos, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So I'm a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies and lead developer relations for Backstage. But I want to actually get to know you. So I'm going to ask you some questions. So who here onboarded in the past few years as an engineer or a developer? Come on. Be honest. I know you did. Who actually loved the onboarding experience? Ooh, okay. Well, it's good that I'm here then, probably. Who can find all the documentation they need to do their job properly? Okay. Who hates switching between portals, tools, systems to do their work? To deploy an application, go to all these portals, find out all these languages, these tools, these frameworks? Exactly. And it sounds familiar. And I will share you a little bit of a story here. Because modern day software development is super confusing. Life as a developer is pretty hard. There's all these languages that you need to learn for all these different platforms, client platforms. There are many, many of them. There are so many new things you need to learn about cloud native development. But also, in these times, you are either scaling up or scaling down. And both things are really difficult things to go through. And probably you will spend not that much time to write actual code in your work. So research shows that you only spend a third of your time writing code. And that third of the time is also going to all those portals. I'm today going to share some of the secret sauce we have at Spotify to improve our developer experience and make sure that we have the happiest developers on earth. So how do we do that? So Spotify is known for the music app. Probably you use it or you know people who use it. But we are also famous because of our engineering culture. And a lot has been written about it, like how we are organized in autonomous teams with the squads, with everything. But that is an organizational thing, right? So how do we actually work? So I'm going to take you on a little tour through the past. So, well, this is apparently a very old website. Back in the days when Spotify was a monolith service. And we had a small team of engineers. And they would fit in a van, and they could go on a Friday night to go to the bar. It would just all work. And the servers had a name, and the servers were managed in a spreadsheet. Well, that's a good best practice, right? Managing stuff in a spreadsheet? No? Well, when you're with a small team, you know, why bother? But we were growing, and we were growing fast, and new technologies were introduced. And it became more complicated to work together, because we had to understand not only who builds it, but also who is running on call. If things are on fire, who am I going to call in the middle of the night? So we tried to solve it, and we created a CMDB. So we could see who owns the service and who was running on call. And over the years, well, we grew some more. And more technologies were introduced, and there were more client platforms introduced. And instead of like writing in 2 different languages, we had multiple of those. And new knowledge domains needed to be added because we had data. So we needed data engineers. So that was increasingly becoming difficult. And it became actually a small village in which you had to work. But that's confusing. Because if you want to know where is the documentation and who wrote it for that one API, and the person moved on to another team, or they use maybe Confluence, but you work in Google Docs, and you need to know where it is, and then where the person is if the documentation is not right. And that was not good, because you needed the tribal knowledge. So you ask people, hey, do you know where that service is running? Do you know who to contact for this? Do you know who knows is the best person to ask about this this piece of application? How can I collaborate with them? So skip ahead a little bit to the year 2016. This is one of my favorite campaigns, by the way. The first thing I had to think about when I joined Spotify. We were in hypergrowth, but onboarding became hyper confusing. So we were adding more engineers, but actually that made us slower. It made us slow down, while we needed to speed the things up. But there was so much fragmentation, because if you can't find the information, if you can't find a place to do your work properly, then you will build a new place to do your work properly. So new portals were added, tooling was added, but it didn't improve the overall velocity. We were just trying to patch band-aids here and there. And there was so much chaos. And onboarding there and finding everything and anything, it was just hard. So one of the things that we measure at Spotify is the number of days it takes to get to the 10th pull request. It was 60 days at some point. Just imagine you join that hip company with a beautiful logo, you love their app, you're a fan of music probably, and you join that company and it takes you 60 days to be productive. That's not a good story. And we knew we needed to change that. So what we did, we put together a team of brilliant people. And those people, they built a portal, a developer portal. So what was in there? Well, you could find who was running a call, you could find where's the documentation, you could see how it was linked to the rest of the application, of the backend systems, you could see who was managing the backend systems. So that was pretty good, right? Solved. But not really. And why wasn't it solved? Well, because one team can't possibly decide what is good for the whole organization. Because they have their own knowledge domains. They have their own things they know. They know how it works. That was maybe infrastructure. So they knew how to provide self-service for that. But the data engineers, they wanted to provide self-service as well. And that's where it became difficult, because the backlog of the team was enormous. People wanted to add new types of services. People wanted to add data pipelines. People wanted to add self-service. So what happened? They went around it again, right? So they created, again, their own stuff. That was not really good. So we went back to the drawing board, because we are a consumer service, right? So we know customers. And customers love our products. They really feel passionate about it. So why don't we take all that knowledge that we have in providing a great service to them, to our developers? Let's treat them as customers. So let's put together a team which, had user researchers. A team that would invest in understanding what really matters. What is really what they want? How can we solve this problem? And there were a few things that came out of that. So one of the things is, well, it's actually three things. So what, as it turned out, and you might be thinking, you didn't need the research for this, but okay, here I go. So they wanted speed, but they did not want to lose the safety. You want to make sure that you don't lose your compliancy. You want to scale, but you do not want to lose the quality. And that chaos that I talked about, that's super important to have that chaos. Why? Because from chaos comes innovation. It is what you need to do. You can't wait for a year to adopt a tool if you need it today to try out that new feature that might change the business, that might provide massive value to you, to the engineering organization, or to your customer. So I'd rather say not control the chaos, but embrace the chaos. And we added some other things, like we added golden paths. Because people did not want to be told what to do. They wanted to know What was the best practice? And then make a decision. Am I going to follow this best practice? Is this good enough for what I need to do? Or am I doing something which is innovation, which doesn't fit that particular path? That's just a little bit different. Just let them figure it out themselves. They don't need people to tell what to do. And one of the other things is that we figured that at the center should be a portal, but it should not be managed by one team. Everybody should be able to put whatever they want inside of that portal. And so we did, and Backstage was born. And Backstage was actually a platform. And the developer experience was built with plugins. And that was a massive success, because then everybody with knowledge domain, with knowledge in their knowledge domain, they could actually create a plugin. They could create that self-service functionality. They could bring that insights, for instance, in observability. And that was a massive success. So 80% of the contributions of Backstage, our developer portal, came from our core team, from outside of our core team. And that is over 120 plugins that are contributed that are actually being used. There's way more, but sometimes, you know, stuff disappears. You don't need it anymore because there's different tooling. And then a lot of people, well, as I talked about before, we are known about our engineering culture. And people ask us, but how do you actually do it? Because they notice it's not easy to adopt a Spotify model or parts of it. And one of the things that came up in our conversations was Backstage. So they said, hey, can we get our hands on that? That looks pretty neat. We want that too. Can you sell it or something? And we had a lot of internal discussion, and we figured that to be able to create the best developer experience for our own developers is to open source it and bring back all the learnings and everything that's going on in an open source project to our own developer portal as well. So we went ahead and did it. We open sourced Backstage a little over 2.5 years ago. And we donated it to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which ensures the future of this project, and which is a massive, massive catalysator for this project. There's over 500 companies which have today adopted Backstage, and we made a guesstimation. That's over 1 million developers doing their work every day with this portal. And this is like, it says 400 here. This is like from 3 weeks ago. We had a conference in Detroit, and we asked people, hey, if you're in the room and you have, you have deployed Backstage in your organization, can you put your name on that list? And they did, which was a great surprise for us. And it's a very active project with a great community. People do not only discuss about Backstage or technical stuff, they talk about the passion, and that is developer experience. It is platform engineering. It is inner sourcing. And over 60 plugins are contributed to open source Backstage. And it's growing rapidly. And more are coming in the following months. There might be some tool in here which you recognize. So why? Why go with open source? Well, first of all, a lot of you like this because you get to work on this open source project. It is visible. It's basically, on your GitHub, which is the new LinkedIn for developers, I might say. But in your company, it's also super valuable because you contribute maybe something back, or others contribute something back, because with all those companies looking at this project and all those insights that they have and the maybe different skill that they have, it will be added to the project and you benefit of that. If you create a plugin for some tool that you use and you decide and go ahead and open source that plugin, chances are that it will be picked up by the rest of the community. And that will ensure that it will be the best plugin that you can make. Okay, so I know this is a keynote, but I generally think that it's maybe good to show a demo. Who's up for a demo? Who wants to see it? Yeah? Okay, let's hope that my laptop is not asleep. There you go. Good. So, yeah, a little story here as well. So I'm this developer, and I was searching for a job, and I found a very cool company. It's called Rocket. It's a rocket company, like the Uber for space travel. And I was hired to work there on an application called the Lunch app. And please do not confuse it with the Launch app, because that happened at some point. Somebody said, please start a lunch, and they started the launch, which was not good, I can tell you. But anyways, I was hired to work on that. And the first thing I did was actually going through to the documentation website in Backstage, which is the developer portal that they use. Because a golden path, it shows me the way. It tells me from starting up my laptop to building my local developer environment to knowing more about the services and how they interact, what tooling is available. And very playfully, it will introduce me to this developer portal. Because this company uses this, to build their services, to find information, and I'm a bit getting acquainted with that. So that's super valuable. And also, if I want to search for some documentation, there's this search engine, and version 1.0 was just released. And it can search in basically anywhere. Because like many other companies, this company has their documentation stored in Confluence, Google Docs, and luckily also, they try to put it with their code, which is, of course, the good place to put your documentation. Okay, so when I go through this golden path, at the end, I would have launched my first microservice. And that would communicate with other services because it should be a real-life situation. Now, this won't be the $1 million app generating revenue, but to give an example, at Spotify, when I was onboarding, in the end, I created an app which shows some music and you can shuffle it. You're like, I can use my application, but it's cool to do that in your first week, to be able to actually see how things work together and to build up trust and confidence. So, but yeah, after that first week, I'm done. I had that application launched. So I try to find out what is there in that landscape that we have here. I hope that you all can see that. Okay. So yeah, I want to figure out what services do they have, so I can filter, I can search on maybe an owner. I'm part of the travel experience group, and I work on the Lunch app. So I want to take a look at that one. Of course, doc type is not valid JSON. Thank you for that. So this is the entity page. And this is basically the home page of a service. And that can be a microservice, can be a database, can be a website, can be anything. And this shows me important, relevant information. Now, in this case, we use Rootly, so it shows if there's any active incidents and a little graph over the past 30 days. I use GitHub security, so it shows my insight, maybe some valuable graph. This is not valuable probably, but okay. Links to my Grafana dashboard, and well, the thing I'm always struggling with, it's the relations. So how does it actually relate to the other services that we have? And if I want to zoom into that, I can go here and I can take a look at that. So if I take this, then it shows some impressive graph, and it shows some of these relations. And luckily, I can filter those as well, and get a general idea of where I am in the whole landscape. So another example of a plugin is this one. It's in the tabs. You put more rich information. Like for instance, I don't care a lot about GitHub pipelines, or, GitHub actions at all. But what I do like is if it's completed or if it's failed. And if it's failed, the only thing I want to know is what step did fail, so that I could solve it, could determine where to go next. Now, this does not replace the tool. It doesn't. It doesn't replace any tool. but it gives me the relevant information so that I don't need to context switch. I don't need to go to another tab in my browser. Like, in general, if I'm working and not using Backstage, I would have 30 tabs open, you know, to look at all the different aspects of my whole pipeline. I look at my cloud provider, I have all that information open. Because who knows what will fail, and I am able to solve it. Another example, in this case, I'm using Azure for this application. Now, I'm always struggling with the portal and where to find what. So there's this handy plugin, which shows me the direct links to the resource groups based on tags, but also the security recommendations. And this can be literally any plugin that's useful for you. Okay, so let's take a look at the API, which is the flight info API. It's managed by another team. And I want to go and create my own microservice just to test a little bit if I can extend the functionality. I don't want to contribute to the main application because I'm new here and I just want to figure some things out. I had this great idea about lunch. So let me check the documentation. So this is, of course, showing the Swagger style documentation. So I know how to get started. I know a little bit more about how this API works, and I can go to the documentation to find out more if I want to. Okay, so I've learned a little bit now about this environment, but also I need an application, which is the booking app. So because I want to make sure that people can order lunch while they're booking, so I'm going to create a little service between that. But it seems not to be here, so I need to add it, which gives us a great reason to look at the YAML, because the metadata is saved in YAML. Is this an ah or a nah? I don't know. Are you not passionate about YAML? No. Oh. Gee. Well. So this is basically following the Kubernetes object model, which is not important, but we think it's a very clear model to follow. But if you are familiar, it's good to know that it's not basically the same. We just follow the model. So you have your annotations, and in annotations you put the configuration of your plugins. So you recognize the plugins that you've just seen on the screen. And also all the other metadata. So this metadata is managed by one team. Even if you collaborate with the whole organizational application, it's important to have one team being responsible for the metadata. Why? Otherwise it will be a mess, and it's easier to keep track of things if you just have one team basically being responsible for that metadata. So I want to add this one. So I'm going to copy that, create a new component, register an existing one. And this is one of the ways in which I can add new services to my catalog. But there's also other ways, because you might have more than 10 services in your company. Luckily, there's also ways to import them automatically. There's extensions that you can build to import the information from basically anywhere and show that information in your catalog. So it is there. Of course, the security insights are not there. Why not? Well, because in this case, it uses Azure pipelines. So this is a Azure DevOps project that we have. As you see, I press the CI/CD tab, and it shows the same information, but from a different tool. Now, why is that important? Because context switching is also distracting. If you want to stay in the flow, you need to know in which tab is which information, and it shouldn't really matter which tool is being used. Like if the observability people decide to change tooling to some other tool, then you do not need to worry about that. You will see it when you get to that tab and you see that there's this other tool. Probably there's 10 emails that you missed about it, but okay. Anyways, you know where the information is. And why is it important to show this? Well, it's easy to do this because it's all TypeScript, and you can put in an if statement and display the relevant plugin depending on the metadata in your file. So another thing that's fun to see is how I'm going to create my new application. So I'm going to go with React app template. This is the software templates, and that's our scaffolder functionality. And with this, you can ensure that whatever you deploy, it is according to the best practices. It is following the standards. Now, I said before, we don't force people to use a golden path. We don't force people to end up in a golden state, which is the preferred state of an application. We don't force them. But having this functionality gives them so much incentive. Why? Because you get everything for free, basically. You don't have to configure your observability. You don't have to configure your cloud service. You don't have to configure anything because everything that is necessary, you would normally put in a software template. There's banks, they have ticketing systems. They even create their tickets from here and update them and close them to make it as easy and frictionless as possible. Because infrastructure, it's not that infrastructure, developers should adapt themselves to the infrastructure. It is that infrastructure should adapt to the developer. So this experience should adapt to the developer. It should be easy to do it, not lose time on this. You already have so little time to write code, right? But anyways, I'm gonna deploy a new application. I'm gonna name it Shalom 123 because I'm Dutch and I'm in Israel, so there you go. And I'm in the travel experience organization team. So once again, the owner is a team. And I fill out this template. I select where I'm going to deploy it. So I have GitLab, GitHub Enterprise, and GitHub. But I'm going to place this one on GitHub. As an owner, that's in this case my organizational account. And I'm going to create a repository. So this copies over the skeleton files. It makes sure that everything is configured right. And when this is all done, I can start publishing my code here. Right? So I could get going with what I need to do. And this will take a while because I'm on a VPN, so I'm not going to bore you with that. Other examples of plugins, well, we're a TechRadarCon, so, you know. This is the TechRadar functionality in Backstage. Basically works the same way. We have a team of architects. We decide on what is new, what is upcoming, what people should try, what people should refrain from. What stuff is getting out the door, hopefully as soon as possible. But once again, we have autonomous teams, so it's up to them in the end of the day. There's also an inner sourcing functionality marketplace. So if you have knowledge, and this was really successful at Spotify, if you have knowledge about a certain topic, it's good to see and be able to find projects or opportunities to join a sprint where your specific knowledge is needed. And otherwise, if you are a project and you're going through a framework in a migration and you need a specialist on that, you post it here. So in this case, it's the marketing department and they need help. They need a CSS wizard. I wonder why that is, because why can't CSS be urgent? So let's take a look at what they have here. So there's this, also the entity page here. So there's a Rootly incident open. Major incident in pricing. I think that they have an issue with their CSS and shows the wrong price. That's cute. But I can discover more about the project and contact them. There's a direct link to their Slack channel. And I can decide if I want to help them out, maybe a sprint or maybe two, to figure out, because if their CSS is messy, there might be more fun things to do there. Also, having cost insights is something that we all really love, especially if you use cloud services. So being able to see on a project level or at service level, what cost do you make for that service? That's really inspiring to be efficient in how you program your services, right? So if you see that that costs you 24 engineers, then maybe it's a good idea to look at that functionality and maybe make it a bit more efficient. Maybe don't over-engineer things. And there's also, of course, the possibility to create plugins yourself. There's a very handy command, CLI command, that basically gives you the whole framework for creating your plugin. And this is what then the output is. It calls an API, so it shows you how that works through the proxy service. It's a great getting started template. So with this, you can create a valuable plugin anywhere between 2 hours and a few days, depending on how extensive that is. So that is a little look at Backstage. If you can switch it back to the presentation, please. Thank you. But you might be thinking, yeah, that's cool, but we are not Spotify. Why should we invest in this? Why is this worth our time? Well, like I discussed, engineering things nowadays is very hard. There's a lot of smart tools, but the challenges that we try to solve, they are also becoming increasingly complex. Collaboration is becoming increasingly complex because for any given functionality, you need multiple people with multiple expertise. When you are in a company and you decide to adopt tooling, the actual adoption is a bit hard. Why? Well, because there are so many tools and you already have all that other stuff that you need to do your job. And reading all that emails about, yeah, we're using now this tool for observability or for CI/CD, or we've updated this or that. It's pretty much like, these advertisements you see in the subway. You just walk past them like, this person is at work and is running through the coffee machine, not paying attention. But there's also other reasons. Other reasons to invest in developer experience, to invest in platform engineering, to do inner sourcing, to create that culture, to implement Backstage to help you with that. So I'm going to touch upon 5 things. And if you're like, yeah, well, the Backstage, I don't know about it, please take these then as a takeaway. So there's 5 things, and the space framework is research that is published by people from Microsoft Research, University of Victoria, and some other smart people. Satisfaction. So this is a stock photo. This is not my actual manager, but he looks like him, so I thought it was funny. Happiness. Happiness is not a fluffy thing, right? It's something that is really important, because who does not want to feel happy at work? It's about feeling able to do your work. It's about the tools that you have, the community around you, the teams that you work with. The speed or productivity in your work, it does not define happiness at all. Because your outputs your activities might be really, really high. If you look at a person, oh, that person has skyrocketing activity, that's so good. No, that person might be running into a burnout. That person might not be happy. That person might crank out some really, really bad code because the person is unhappy. It does not define happiness. You need to look beyond that. Performance is something that you can measure, but where insights are really valuable on all levels, because you need to be able to see what the outcome is. Knowing what the outcome is really helps you feel your purpose, see the effects of what you are doing. Outcome is about actual what is out there, what is the result of your work. And this is maybe the most easy one, people might think. It's about the actions, the number of things that you do. So if you lower friction, you will have more activity. It's all those metrics that probably come up in your performance talk as well, right? But it is on what level that you look at it, what matters. Because that activity is not important maybe on a team level, but for you personally, it might be really valuable to see how you're doing. Collaboration and communication, it is about how you work. It's about being able to contribute to each other's success. Can you do that? Transparency and awareness. So if you want to be able to collaborate, then everybody should be able to gain the same amount of information. Everybody should be able to have a good onboarding experience. Everybody should be able to share and find expertise, to find documentation. And well, I discussed a few times about confusing things and things that cause friction if you need to context switch all the time. And that is all about efficiency and flow. Because if you are in the flow, you want to stay there. You don't want to be bothered by some portal that they changed around again. You want to be bothered by all these multi-factor things when you log in to yet another tool. I always lose my phone. Somebody yelled at some conference, because you're old. Well, maybe that's true, but I normally leave it at the coffee machine because I just have my hands full, but okay. It is about staying in that flow and being able to get all the information that you need to do your job properly in one place. And we like to summarize it that if you make developers happy, they write good code. So that is our tagline. Oh, there's a picture. Wait, let me post. Like, happy developers make happy code. Like, yeah, okay. So, but if you don't make your developers happy, they will still end up happy, but with a box in their hands, walking away from your office. And then you have a problem because you need to onboard somebody new again. So to summarize, Backstage is one front end for your whole developer experience. If you want to be like us and want to serve your customers, which is your developers, you want to do proper platform engineering, you need to be able to give the power of that in their hands. You want to be able to adopt all those tools, not replace it, but embrace that it's there. Embrace that people have different domain knowledge. Embrace that people work in different ways and that they have different tooling or languages that they use. It is not to replace or be a single source of truth. It is for all those single sources of truth that you have. And that creates a single pane of glass. Oh, single pane of glass. Yes. Backstage lets any developer create, manage, and explore. And we've just seen in a demo how powerful that can be. And that is just a demo of a very basic scenario. And it's up to your imagination to create a good developer experience, because you know best how your company works, which problems you are trying to tackle, right? And you can do that, leveraging the plugin framework. So it is built, basically it's an NPM package, so if you have a plugin, that's what you are creating. Backstage is a bunch of TypeScript, React, and Node, and you're good to go. And you can create plugins, like you've seen, the Tag Radar plugin that is showing some information from a file that will cost you not much time to create. But also the richer experiences, like the GitHub ones, they bring a lot of value. All those plugins, the most that you've seen are using a Backstage proxy to get the information from some API and display that. But that's already so valuable. And you can write a whole application with business logic in there. So, to summarize, the secret sauce, create a team around developer happiness. It doesn't matter how you name it. Developer experience, platform engineering, DevOps, super team, I don't know. Make them accountable for the adoption metrics. Invest in other roles, product managers, user researchers, anything that you would do for a customer team. And try to deeply understand them. For instance, with surveys that you send out regularly about anything, the tools they use, how they collaborate, how they like it. Build the golden path, show them the way, what is the preferred way, what is the best practices way, and make them enable them to end up in the golden state. And adapt the infrastructure to your developers instead of the other way around, because that won't work. And put it all together with a tool like Backstage. I want to thank you so much for your attention and wish you a really, really great day here at this conference. And if you want to learn more about Backstage, here's a QR code. You can scan it. It has a getting started guide, which will get you started anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. And also show much, much more information about Backstage. Thank you so much, and have an awesome conference, folks.